Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Nice to see all your faces. My name is Jen. I am the co-founder of New Hampshire First Aid Technology, along with Deb Hodgson, who could not be here today, and Lori Schreier, another important team member. We also have the lovely Cece Doucette here, who is going to be hosting for us as well. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm very passionate about this subject is the best way to say it, because I unfortunately am electromagnetic hypersensitive. If you don't know that term, we'll go into it a little bit more with Cece's presentation, but it's essentially through years of exposure to electromagnetic fields via Wi-Fi, smart meter, rad tower that we had near our home, and also my cell phone to my ear, being a small business owner for 10 years, without knowing the cumulative damage that was happening to my body. So essentially, I spent 2 really ugly years, very sick from this and trying to figure out what happened to me. I thankfully discovered some information which was very scarce at the moment, back about 12 years ago online, and was able to figure out what was wrong. So here I am, and just sharing sort of my knowledge, and in hopes that what happened to me doesn't happen to you. So Cece and I and Deb and Lori are just doing these education sessions, just really trying to get the word out and help folks really discover that there are dangers associated with wireless, and just to figure out, how to mitigate the risk. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you a very short story, and then I'm going to sort of segue over to Cece. So I travel quite a bit for work. I'm still a small business owner. I've had my business for over 20 years now. So I travel quite a bit for work, and thankfully, through my knowledge of this subject, I've really learned so much to really learn how to protect myself. So one of the things that I swear by is my meter here. And again, Cece will talk a little bit about this. There's lots of different meters, but this one here is a safe and sound. So I went on a business trip this week. Long story short, I went checked into the Airbnb cabin, thinking I'm in rural Vermont. I'm going to be, in a low EMF area. I'll be safe. And I went into the cabin, and literally within 5 minutes, I felt like my head was going to pop. One of the symptoms is really bad pressure headache. So here I am, 5 minutes in the cabin, really bad pressure headache. I turned off what I thought was a Wi-Fi router, and it still existed. So I said, okay, I need to do a little investigative work. So I used my meter and went around the cabin and found this, what looked like a very unassuming unit. And it turned out to be a Starlink unit. And I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that. So I did a before and after reading that we're going to post on our Facebook, but the before reading was 1,500,000, and a safe level is supposed to be under 10. So literally, the explanation for why my body felt like it was being microwaved, essentially. So I, of course, shut it right down and did a reading afterwards, and the reading came right down to under 10. So it's these sort of things that are creeping up in our environments that it's really good to do that investigative work and, figure out what's happening there. A similar situation happened last week. I was in a cabin in Connecticut, again, a very rural area of Connecticut, and there was a smart plug, a Gouvet smart plug, and a temperature reading. And again, I did my readings with my meter, and both of them were really, really high levels. So I guess the reason why I'm conveying this information is do the homework. Figure out what's in your environment that's causing these high levels of EMF, because there are ways, very simple ways that you can mitigate. Ideally, don't have them at all. Have wired, but if you're away, staying somewhere, or even temporarily, you're trying to figure out a solution to have your environment be safe, unplugging these things is really going to do a world of difference for your body. So, and I don't want to take up too much time here. So I am going to go ahead and introduce Cece, our lovely host. And Cece has been amazing with working with us and doing these educational sessions twice a month. So we encourage you to pass this information on to your loved ones and also attend any future sessions. We welcome all. So Cece helped her children's schools become the first in the nation to take precautionary measures with wireless technology. She is the director of Massachusetts for Safe Technology and works with communities, schools, municipalities, and legislators to address wireless radiation in public health. She is also the Education Services Director with the International Nonprofit Wireless Education, which offers affordable 30-minute online training for schools and families. Cece was honored to co-chair the technology panel for the Health and Building Roundtable Conference at the National Institute of Health and to present state and local policy at the International EMF Conference. She has been featured on Genius of Wellness, Boston 25 News, PBS, O'Dwyer's, EMF Warriors, and in the films Generation Zapped and Wi-Fi Refugees. So we welcome Cece today, and as I mentioned, she's going to be giving you a wealth of information on this subject and just ways that you can sort of mitigate your exposure to wireless dangers. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Cece. Thanks, Cece.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen. You know, it was hard enough hearing that you had to go away on your anniversary and deal with wireless when you thought you were just going to have a nice getaway. But now to know also that on your business trip, you're having to be that careful. But, you know, she's right. Seeing these invisible exposures with the radio frequency detection meter is about the only way to know when we are in harm's way. So I admire your courage. You guys are my heroes for doing this every single day and trying to keep the rest of us safe too. So thank you so much, Jen. Thank you everybody for joining us. I love when we come into these meetings and we see friends and familiar faces and people from all over the country who are out there fighting in their own corner of the world to make a safe environment for themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. So hats off to all of you guys for everything that you're doing. And for those who are just joining the conversation and came to learn a little bit about wireless, I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share. And Jen, can you give me a nod if you can see my screen? Okay, great. So again, my name is Cece Doucette. This just means I got to earn a master's in technical and professional writing from Northeastern University, which I was happily using before the wireless issue found me. So, but I get to use a lot of my skill set in the work that I do. So I'm very honored to be able to do that. And as Lori mentioned, we did become the first in the nation to even have this little sign hanging in our classrooms with best practices for mobile devices. And so it was not an easy conversation, and I'll share with you in a minute how we got this far. Then I worked with my senator in 2014 to introduce legislation here in Massachusetts. And although we've made some progress throughout these legislative sessions subsequently, we have yet to do anything meaningful in Massachusetts other than allow more and more toxic technology in. Fortunately, when Deb Hodgson met with her state rep, Patrick Abrami, and told him how sick she had gotten, and her doctors couldn't figure it out, specialists couldn't figure it out. So she started doing her own research and she figured it out. Rep Abrami and I and Deb met, and he wound up introducing a bill that we were able to get passed in 7 months' time in New Hampshire. And we'll tell you more about that too. So there's, as daunting as this issue is, there are solutions at every turn, and that's mostly what we're here to share today. But we want you to have a good feel for the facts as well. So yeah, I was really honored to be contacted. Dr. Deborah Davis put me in touch with Brett and Lynn West in the UK and Dr. Mikko Ahonen in Finland. And together we volunteered our time and built this little nonprofit. We have off-the-shelf training that we can train an entire school district or an entire workforce in about a half an hour on your lunch break. So like I said, solutions everywhere. We are migrating our schools and families course over to a new platform, which we hope to have back online in a couple of weeks. So when I fell down the rabbit hole, I was pretty much the only person I could talk to about this. And that's how it was for the first couple of years. And I honestly didn't really even know what I was saying. because I was so new to this. But then there was an expert panel at the Massachusetts State House. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I went down to the State House. I sat through this standing room only forum. And I was just so gratified to find all these other people who were talking about wireless radiation, and at our State House. So ultimately, a bunch of us from around the state founded Massachusetts for Safe Technology. And we do a monthly meeting to check in with one another and say, hey, what's going on in your town? Any progress, any lessons learned? So we welcome everybody from around the country or the world to join us for those meetings too. They're typically the third Wednesday of every month at noon Eastern. This month, I'm not available on that date, so we're going to do it on the fourth Wednesday, which is the 30th. So another opportunity to come learn and to share what's happening in your neck of the woods. I like to share this link here. And when Jen sends out the thank you after today's webinar, she'll include a link to my slides. And we also place it on YouTube in the video description. So you can always come back and get the materials that we're presenting today. But I like to include this one because somebody down at the National Institutes of Health found my work in 2018. And asked if I would co-chair the technology panel for this Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference. And I said, well, you know, I have a master's, but I don't have the terminal degree, the PhD. And they said, that's okay. We like the way you present information. I said, okay, if you'll have me, I'll educate anybody. But I was so thankful that the folks who agreed to join my panel included Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada, who's now speaking out very vocally on this issue. And he founded Canadians for Safe Technology instead of just kicking back and enjoying his retirement and his grandkids. So thank you, Frank. We also had Dr. Martin Paul, who's one of the world's leading scientists. He's come out with review papers, which, and I'm not a scientist, but I'm learning a lot. And a review paper gathers up all the science that's been done on a particular topic. And then you assimilate it and you see what your findings are. So Dr. Paul has done findings on Wi-Fi. He's done findings on neurological impacts. He recently came out with a paper on earlier and earlier onset Alzheimer's as we continue to pollute the environment of the brain with radio frequency. If you're not speaking, could I please ask you to mute your microphone? Thank you. We also had at this conference Theodora Scarrato, who's the executive director of the Environmental Health Trust, and she talked us through what other countries are doing. And then we had Peter Sullivan, and I had first stumbled across Peter's work when he was giving a YouTube or a lecture that was recorded on YouTube. And he had been a fighter pilot for our country, you know, Top Gun. And he was up there with the you know, all the high natural radiation up in the stratosphere there. And he also had all the radar and the man-made radiation inside and mounted on his plane. Well, Peter got very, very sick, dropped weight, teeth were getting brittle. And then as he became a father, when both of his children came into the preschool years, both of his kids wound up on the autism spectrum. And Peter did what a lot of parents will do. They will go to a clean organic diet and stop putting toxic food in the body, and then maybe do the heavy metal detox and get those toxins out of the body. And today he will tell families with an autistic family member or multiple, do the digital detox right away. And he found that when he removed the radio frequency radiation from his son's environment, both of his kids healed. And we know that every single body is very biologically different. So we don't want to lead anybody on and say, get rid of the Wi-Fi, you'll be healed. Every body is different. But in his case, when he cleaned everything up, including the wireless, both of his children healed. He healed. And now his sons are grown young men, and neither one of his boys are on the autism spectrum anymore. And I didn't even know that was a possibility. But apparently there's something called de novo mutations, which means it didn't come from mom and it didn't come from dad. It came from somewhere in the environment. So Peter came and joined us for a talk about what we can do to make our buildings safer. And so I like to include this link because all of our talks were under 10 minutes. So if you're talking to somebody and they think you should be wearing a tinfoil hat or something, you can say, no, look, this is really serious. Look, they educated architects, builders, city planners, urban planners, hospitals, doctors, government agencies, all of them were in attendance at this conference. So that's a really credible one to share. And then one of the big gaps we had when I first fell down this rabbit hole is that we didn't have any way to train our healthcare practitioners. And so many people were getting so sick and misdiagnosed and still suffering. So we are so very grateful that in 2019, Dr. Lynn Patrick organized the first EMF medical conference. And then in 2021, Elizabeth Kelly, who has been working on this issue for decades, she organized the second EMF medical conference, and then the pandemic hit. And so we had to pivot and go to an online platform. And the beauty of that online platform is that we had to record every single one of the lectures. We recorded every one of the panel discussions. And now all of that professional training is available to the whole world. There are 24.5 continuing medical education credits for licensed healthcare practitioners, and that includes nurses because Libby went through the separate protocol to get the CEs for nurses. So when you are talking to your doctors, when you're talking to your nurses, your town first responders, your firefighters, and everybody else, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the school counselors, everybody can be professionally trained on this now. So please go out to the EMF Medical Conference. If you go to the Massachusetts for Safe Technology website on our events page, I have this link and also a letter that you can give right to your doctors. I take it with me to every dentist appointment, every chiropractor, acupuncture appointment, and make sure that they know they have the right to learn this very critical information today. So that's how I fell down the rabbit hole. So how did our schools become the first in the nation to even have this little sign hanging in our classrooms? Well, I think it was when they read the legal fine print. So anybody with us today that has an iPhone, I welcome you to take that out right now. And if you don't have an iPhone, that's okay. Our friends at Environmental Health Trust and others have put together a web page called See the Fine Print, where you can go and look at what these fine print warnings are say. Here's one that the Apple used to have, the iPad used to have in it, that talked about seizures and blackouts and eye strain. And I know children who had their first seizures while using the iPad. So go into settings on your iPhone, a little ways down, hit general. On a really old phone, you would then hit about, but most people have upgraded. So from general, go all the way down to legal and regulatory. And you can remember this acronym GAL to get back there, because this is one of the surefire ways to get somebody's attention on this issue. Otherwise, it's theoretical. When you show them this in their own phone, then it becomes personal. So remember the acronym GAL to get back there. Once you're in legal and regulatory, about 4 down, you'll see RF exposure. This is the radio frequency microwave radiation fine print disclaimer that's been in there all along, and it tells us a couple of really important things in the first few paragraphs. One, they tell us that this device was tested at a distance from the body, so don't tuck it into your suit pocket, your shirt pocket, or your bra. Don't be putting it in your waistband or in your back pocket while it's actively transmitting, because you will exceed the FCC limits for public radiation exposure. And we now know that those were never biologically safety tested. So the industry and the FCC allow like this much radiation. But what we're going to see in the science in a minute is that the radiation harm is happening at hundreds of thousands of times below what the industry is still allowed to put out to us. In the next paragraph in there, you'll see that it suggests that you use a hands-free option. So don't touch these things when they're radiating. And the reason why is there are multiple antennas in the one device. So a cell phone today has a cellular and a data antenna, a Bluetooth antenna, a Wi-Fi antenna, a locator antenna, a hotspot antenna. And if you didn't know any better, to upgrade to a 5G phone, please don't, because they are putting more and more antennas in for that. So these are all over inside your phone, and each one is independently going, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? At millions and billions of cycles per second. That's what a megahertz is a million times a second. And a gigahertz is a billion times a second. It's pulsing this spiked, erratic microwave radiation. And so the message today is certainly not no technology, because here we are, from my end, safely accessing technology. And we love it and we live our lives by it, but it's high time we be given the facts so that we can make informed choices. So that fine print warning says use a speakerphone or a hands-free option. And what that might mean is a headset, which they recommend in there, but you don't want to plug a wired headset from a radiating device right up to your brain, because the radiation travels on metal. It's drawn to metal. It amplifies with metal. So if you plug this into your phone and then you put a metal piece up to your ear, that's a really bad recipe. And like I said, there are solutions at every turn. I'll come out of screen share right now just to show you this a little bit bigger. So this is something called a hollow tube headset. It has a wire that plugs into your device, but then it comes up, you know, and it's got mute and audio control and stuff. But see these little ferrite beads? They stop the radiation from transmitting, but you still get good acoustics. And it's through a hollow tube or an air tube that you can hook over your ears and put right in, with no metal to draw the ambient radiation, let alone what's coming from your own device. So look for a hollow tube or an air tube headset. And now I'd like to give a demonstration of what this invisible toxin is like. Okay. So here in my house, knowing what I know about radio frequency radiation, you see that it's in the blinking green. That's what we want to be at. That's as low as it goes. And in the scientific literature, they want us to be at 10 or less. And the unit of measurement is something called a microwatt per square meter. So within like 3 feet of air, how much radiation is in there? We want to be under 10. Right now, I'm at 4.2. But watch what happens. You know, I keep my phone in airplane mode as a rule. And then I only take it out and only use the antenna that I need for the shortest amount of period possible. People know to just call me on my landline. Who knew you can forward a cell phone to a landline too? And then people get me on the computer because I'm hardwired in my home. So I'm going to take this out of airplane mode and watch what happens as all these antennas start connecting with the cell towers, the routers, pulsing, 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 pulsing microwave radiation, right? And it just keeps going on and on. Oh, mercy. All right, I'm going back in airplane mode. And then I'll tell you what we just witnessed. So I wasn't even doing anything, just activating it. Notice I'm back in the green again. We went from what, 4.2 microwatts to 856,000. And we want to be under 10, 856,000 from one device. So think about everybody who's been sold all this smart technology, put an antenna in your appliances, put an antenna in everything you own, and just radiate the heck out of yourselves all day long. So having a meter is a really good investment. I'm going to go back into the screen share. And we see that down here, I helped my public school district become the first in the nation to put one of these devices on loan. So that was really awesome. A doctor and I went after another one in her community out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where Verizon put a cell tower right on top of a neighborhood. It made that community so sick, 20 children and adults who have had to abandon their homes while they try and get their town to fix it, make Verizon turn that tower off and move it away from the populace. They've been fighting for 2 years and they are making incredible inroads, but still these families have been displaced and harmed for 2 years. So somebody in Pittsfield asked their library to put a meter on loan as well. This is the first meter that I had. It's what we have on loan in these libraries. And then at the medical conference, these are both on par. They're both just under $400. But this one's just a little bit newer and has just a little more current technology, but they're both great meters. So that's something you might consider doing, is finding a way to donate one to your public library so anybody can take it out, go home and measure their home, measure their cars, measure their workspace, measure their kids' schools, and start this important conversation. Okay. Oh, I like this little one here too. My local cable station was so great, and our cable stations love to do things in the community. So know that resource is there too. They're like the last bastion of independent reporting in media today. So they came to my house with cameramen, and we just did a walkthrough of my home that shows what common exposures are like today. And then one by one, we offered suggestions for how to remediate. So that could be very hands-on helpful too. All right. So what does the science tell us? First, we'll look at the long-term effects, and then we'll look at the short-term effects. So child and adult cancers. Here in the United States, we have the National Toxicology Program, which is part of our government. It is part of the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, NIEHS, and the National Institutes of Health. So about 20 years ago, they set out to see if cell phones, which were the technology of the day 2 decades ago, to see if they could be harmful. And they spent years on this study. And in 2018, they had an unprecedented peer review at the National Institutes of Health and brought in world-leading doctors and scientists and other experts whose work is studying the effects of microwave radiation. And they determined in their final report clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage and a bunch of other things. But clear evidence is the highest of 5 categories they can assign. So that should have triggered a public policy update to protect us, but it didn't. The industry gets a hold of every good study and spins it, creates doubt, makes us think, oh, nothing here to look at, right? They'll say, oh, more studies are needed. Well, right on the heels of our big $30 million study, another really big study came out of Italy's Ramazzini Institute, and they found the same things that we did. They corroborated with their science everything that our science showed. So while science can always find, pinpoint and fine tune what we know, we don't need more science. We need public protection and education. So child and adult cancers and DNA damage, which we know is the roadmap to grow a proper anything from a child to a plant to a pollinator, every biome is in harm's way with radiofrequency radiation. It was the infertility studies that got me on my feet. So I started reading the science. And again,
What?
Please mute.
When I get down there.
Hello, please mute yourself. When I read the infertility studies, I learned that they've taken male human sperm and exposed it to a laptop with the antennas radiating, and it changed the DNA. It slowed the motility, and it caused far fewer sperm to be viable in just 4 hours of exposure to a laptop. So that was the day I found my voice and started speaking to our schools and then our town and then our legislators, because I spent years bringing this toxin into our schools. And so we can't stop, and there's no cavalry coming. We have got to do the legwork ourselves. Nobody has taken the ball and run with it. We are doing this as a service to the public because it's the right thing to do. And then neurotoxicity, look at what's happened in our society over the last 2 decades. Such rapid increases in ADD, ADHD, autism, Alzheimer's, asthma. And those are just the A's. But Dr. Hugh Taylor down at Yale Medical. He heads up the OBGYN program there. And he has done some of the scientific investigation. And he found that when he exposed pregnant rodents to radio frequency, the pups came out bouncing off the walls of the cage like a child with ADD or ADHD looks. Dr. Martha Herbert founded the Autism Lab at Massachusetts General Hospital, and she sees huge connections between what we know happens with microwave radiation and what she sees in the families in her care. Alzheimer's, Dr. Martin Pall just came out with a paper in the last couple of months that shows that just like with cancer, Alzheimer's used to take a few decades to really start rearing its ugly head. But now he's reporting that we are seeing Alzheimer's coming on at earlier and earlier and earlier ages, not just 70 and 80-year-olds, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and even in some rare cases, 20-year-olds getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And, you know, one of the main problems that we have is that the mainstream media is by and large owned by the parent companies of the telecom industry, and or their advertising revenue is so potent that the journalists and the editors are kind of forbidden from reporting on this. So the public is just kept in the dark. But we're so grateful when larger groups start figuring this out and start reporting on it, like the Environmental Working Group. I first found them because they put out something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen regarding pesticides in foods. And that helped me to learn which ones I should really buy organic versus which ones I might be able to get away with buying conventional, because they don't, the pesticides don't get as deep into the food that you're going to consume. So I was so grateful that they have now gotten funding to put a PhD scientist on the wireless issue. And hang on one sec, I'm going to go into participants and see if I can mute somebody who probably doesn't realize that we're picking up their microphone. Okay. All right, that should fix it. So the Environmental Working Group now has staff on this, and they have come out with several fact sheets this year. This one over here addresses the effects of radio frequency radiation on the nervous system. And they've also come out with one saying that these public radiation exposure limits set by the FCC are hundreds of times too high to protect our children. So children are especially vulnerable because they're not just little adults. Everything about them is still under construction. And we know this radiation is changing DNA. We know that their skulls are thinner and their brains have a higher water content than a fully formed adult. So with gratitude to Dr. Om Gandhi, who's done this modeling, he shows us that if you put a cell phone, these head models are turned sideways here. If you put a cell phone, that's the little ear in the yellow. You put that cell phone right up to the head like we all use it. Nobody keeps distance when they're talking on their phone. It penetrates into your brain and mine about a third of the way into our brain tissue. On a 10-year-old, this is going about 3/4 of the way into the child's brain. And on a 5-year-old, it's penetrating into the brain tissue almost the entire way through. So we really need to speak up and protect our kids. In the short term, there are a lot of effects that many of us recognize once we're given the facts to think about it. So please know that the Americans with Disabilities Act already has information online about electromagnetic sensitivities. We are biologically electrical beings. So you'll hear words like electromagnetic sensitivity, electro hypersensitivity, EMF for electromagnetic fields. You'll hear radio frequency radiation, microwave radiation. It's all this same man-made pulsation of spiked erratic microwave radiation that's hitting us. So we already have materials we can share with you for the ADA. And symptoms that many people are experiencing today often go away when they just get a little nugget of information to say, turn that stuff off, create a sleep sanctuary. Time and again, people come back and say, oh, you mean I turned off my cell phone, I turned off my router, the Roku, the Chromecast, the Alexa, whatever was transmitting during their sleep. And they come back and say, oh, thank you. I slept for the first time in ages. Headaches, stabbing, searing headaches, migraines that doctors can't figure out, nosebleeds, ear bleeds. And we know what's causing so much of this, the chronic fatigue, the pain from identified sources. We have, well, there's a few different mechanisms of harm. I'll talk about the insomnia. So in a normal environment, in the wee hours of darkness, as part of our circadian rhythm, the brain from the pineal gland releases melatonin. Melatonin then goes in and regulates our sleep. And while we're sleeping, the melatonin helps to clean up the cell repair and regeneration from the day's damage and escort it out through the blood, right? What happens is the brain can perceive this invisible man-made light form that's microwave radiation. And the brain thinks the lights are on. So guess what? You leave the lights on, the brain doesn't release the melatonin to take care of our sleep patterns and to clean out the toxins of the day. So it's really critical to create a sleep sanctuary. Headaches, nosebleeds, fatigue, pain. We have red blood cells that are meant to go and bring oxygen out to all of our systems and organs. But when we have radio frequency, electromagnetic fields, magnetic fields magnetize, and they're starting to make our red blood cells clump together. And this can't get through to oxygenate all of our systems. That's called the rouleau effect. And in my little brain, I think of the candy Rolos. Remember how it comes in a stack of chocolate caramels? Well, that's kind of what's happening to our blood, this stacking. And it can't get to oxygenate all of our systems. And when we are under oxidative stress, that is the precursor for most chronic illnesses. So we're doing a really bad service to ourselves by continuing to listen to the wireless industry that just wants more Wi-Fi all the time, Skin abnormalities. So in the surface of our skin, we have these little antennas, and they are very sensitive to electrical signaling. So skin abnormalities, a lot of people get the hot ear when they hold a cell phone up to their head. I get tingling in my fingers, skin flushing, rashes. We know scientifically why this can happen. Irregular heartbeats. In your body, it might make your heart go too fast. In somebody else's, it might be too slow, but it's interfering with our electrical organs, this constant pulsation of microwave radiation. That energy is disrupting our energy. Cognitive impairment, where we can't think straight anymore, right? As we age, that naturally, we see some decline in that, but we're seeing kids with cognitive impairment. It's all of us. Our brain is a very sensitive organ, and we've got to stop the toxicity. It was really unsettling at the EMF medical conference to hear more than one of the doctors and scientists say that we can expect to see more of these societal outbursts, the mass shootings, people having crazy behavior like we've never seen. We are biologically changing the gray matter and the white matter of the brain with this microwave radiation. One of our speakers at the EMF medical conference is Dr. Gunnar Hauser, and he scanned the brains of firefighters out in Santa Barbara, California, who had the misfortune of the industry placing a cell antenna right at the front of their fire station to power through the radiation to get to this multi-lane highway behind their station. So all that radiation was blasting right through the firehouse where these guys live and work and sleep. And these guys were getting emergency calls, going to get on their engines. They couldn't remember how to properly suit up. They couldn't remember where they were going in their community. And when they finally got there, they couldn't remember how to administer emergency protocols. And when Dr. Hauser scanned their brains with functional MRIs, he saw that the gray matter had been changed. So this is very serious, and we know it's a lot, but anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, another one of the physiological findings that the science tells us is that sensitive areas in our gut, in our brain, have barriers to keep toxins from going in where they ought not to be. What the science shows us through work of Dr. Palpatcher and others is that this microwave pulsation chipping away is opening up the blood-brain barrier. So now where the blood would be escorting toxins out of the body, it can take a left turn through this blood-brain membrane and get into our brain. So it's no wonder we've seen such an uptick in all these neurological issues. And it's not just you and I, as I said, it's every biological system on the planet, our pollinators, our birds, they all have a symbiotic relationship with the earth through magnetite and other mechanisms in their beaks and in their brains that synchronize to the earth's very low electromagnetic field. The earth's harmonizing field is 7.83 hertz. And now we're exposed to billions of times more than that. In the poor birds, we've added this huge layer of electrosmog in our pollinators. It's disrupting their navigation systems and they can't get back to their hives and out there dropping their seeds as they've always done for eternity to help us grow what we grow in our world. So we're really messing with the ecosystem here. And then wireless consumes 10 times more energy than the safe solutions, which we'll talk about next. Mineral extractions, data warehouses, networks, our personal devices are all consuming huge quantities of energy. And a full decade ago, a Greenpeace analyst said, if the cloud were a country, it would be the 5th largest consumer of energy in the world. That was 10 years ago, and look at how much more we've brought in. For ourselves, we can just start saying, hey, how can I do better? What little baby steps can I take? Don't stream live. Download your content, go into airplane mode, and then watch your content. Every time we send and receive, we're using energy. Every time we charge and recharge all of our stuff, we're using energy. And then in the background, we've been talked into all these sexy applications. Maybe we don't even use them, but guess what? They're in the background doing continuous updates that are consuming energy. So little choices we can all start making. So when I was trying to figure this out, I kept thinking, okay, if this is as bad as what little me is able to find in the scientific literature, somebody's got to have our backs on this, right? And then in 2015, 2 years into my journey, Harvard Law School Center for Ethics came out with this incredible free online 59-page report called Captured Agency, how the Federal Communications Commission is dominated by the industries it presumably regulates. So I like this graphic they chose, this revolving door. That's who's running our federal agencies today. These folks from industry who don't care one whit about the public health or safety. They care about their bottom line. So we have people from industry running the FCC. And I went, oh, so nobody's got our backs. And that's what really has given me the courage to do everything I can from boots on the ground to just give people the right to know. Because once we know we're halfway there, then we can start fixing it, right? So that was my missing piece. And remember that $30 million National Toxicology Program study that we looked at. The folks who commissioned that 20 years ago were from the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. They're the ones who said to the NTP, we're going to sponsor you. We want you to do this study. Well, the folks who did that are long since gone, retired or dead. And the gentleman who now heads up the radiation area of the FDA is Dr. Jeffrey Shuren. Dr. Shuren went over to the FCC and said, nothing to look at here. Keep radiating the public at the level that you're radiating the public. And one might ask, what would ever possess that man to do that after we showed clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage? Well, you don't even have to look very far into his background to see that he's married to a woman who's a partner at a law firm that represents, guess who? The wireless industry and the chemical industry, and it just goes on and on and on. So there are huge conflicts of interest at the federal level, and sadly, we see that it goes all the way up to the World Health Organization. Who would know? Who would know? There's two separate groups at the WHO. One are the scientists who are trying to get the truth out there. The other is a group of industry people who have very heavy influence in deep pockets. So all the way up to the top of the world, this corruption exists. But once those animal studies were done by us and by the Ramazzini Institute, there was enough pressure on the WHO to say, okay, we are going to reopen this investigation into radio frequency fields. You're going to be hard pressed to find this. When you go out to the WHO and you type in the wireless issue, you're going to get a bunch of old stuff that basically says, it's undecided. Yeah, don't worry about it. But we can provide you with the link to the appropriate information at the World Health Organization. And they have reopened their investigation because now they're being made to look at cancers, to look at the impact on children, to look at infertility, to look at electromagnetic illnesses. But the question remains, are they stacking this with industry, or are we really going to get to the bottom of this and inform the public that we have a major public health crisis going on here? So that's why we don't know, and they own mainstream media, but that's all the bad news, you guys. Now let's see what we can do today. On the back of your router, you'll see Ethernet plugs, right? Just get a big long Ethernet cable. For people who are sensitive, you would want to get a shielded cable. All that means is that inside the plastic liner or inside the plastic encasement, there's a foil liner wrapped around the wires. That foil liner keeps the electric and magnetic field from bleeding out into your living environment. That's a different kind of man-made radiation. That's extremely low level radiation, but it's still toxic. So if you can, pay a few extra dollars and get a shielded cable, why not do it right the first time? Most of us have multiple devices. You can get like this little extender for electronics. It's kind of like an extension cord. And each one of these holes has its own direct connection to the internet. So you get a much faster signal. You're not competing for bandwidth with the other devices in your home. So you plug the big long cable into one of these, and then you plug it into one of these. And then for each one of your devices, just get a little cable and plug it in. And who knew? You can get these little adapters for most devices today. Don't buy a new device unless you can verify that you can hardwire it. But look at this. That's all you need to do. Plug this into your router, plug this into your Ethernet cable, and then just plug this right into your device, and you're hardwired. So that's the first step. And you can do that with your laptops, with your tablets, everything should have the option to remove the radiation. And the beauty is you really do get so much faster signal, far more reliable. Your data and your privacy are not being hackable out there in the air. And it's so much greener for our world to not be using wireless. So step one, simple and inexpensive hardwiring setup. Step two, maybe one day our engineers will make it such that as soon as you plug in the Ethernet cable, it automatically disables every antenna in that device. But for now, we have to do that step manually. So just go into settings and identify where all your antennas are, and then turn them off. Step three is to measure, because with the Internet of Things, 5G and the Internet of Things, they are looking to put wireless radiating antennas in every single thing you buy. I mean, it's getting so ridiculous. They even have a little clip you can put on baby diapers. So you can sit there and radiate your child. So it will send you a signal if your baby soils itself. Do what we all did. Pick up the baby and do the sniff test and get rid of the wireless. Baby monitors, you don't want those anywhere near your child. So because they're putting multiple antennas in many devices today, you really do need to measure. And So we've talked a lot about our personal devices and what we can do. There are a couple other transmissions that we may or may not have control over. One of them is utility smart meters. And that means that all along our gas company, our electric company, our water company, the propanes, the solars, they have always put meters on our homes to capture our usage for billing purposes. And so what we need to do is walk around our house and see what we've got. If you've got a meter that has an FCC identification number on it, that means that is a digital meter or a smart meter that is pulsating microwave radiation all the time. Okay. I went and testified with the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, and in preparation, I did a little 3-minute video sitting. Actually, I put my daughter's doll on the wall opposite where these things are mounted outside. So on my dining room wall, I measured how often was that pulsating? 17,000 times in a 24-hour period. And if we didn't know better, my goodness, so many people are sleeping right on the other side of these transmissions and wonder why they wind up with insomnia, anxiety, depression, headaches, nosebleeds, heart arrhythmias. We just need to learn, and then we need to use our voices to talk to our towns and to talk to our utility companies and say, first step, we need an opt-out. We want the old analog meter back. Or get your engineers to just hardwire these into the home's Ethernet and get rid of the wireless, and you can still get the data that you need. So these things pulse continuously. The radio frequency, remember I said, it likes metal. It hops on metal and transmits. So when we have these pulsations going on, hooked to our house, it can literally hop onto the wiring of the home, the pipes of the home, and turn the home into a giant wireless antenna. And we know people whose energy companies would not fix it, and they've had to leave their homes and go elsewhere. There's a ton of information on people who are really not qualified installing these. And we see fires, explosions, improper grounding, and a host of others. And, you know, as this diagram here shows us, they are taking your data on your usage and harvesting it. They want you to have smart appliances. They can then sell it to an appliance vendor. So large privacy issues around this too. And at the EMF medical conference, we were told that when these smart meters go on or when cell towers show up outside, these are leading causes of sudden onset microwave sickness. It's also an environmental justice issue here in Worcester, Massachusetts. National Grid came in and sweet talked the town of Worcester into financial gains. And they started putting these smart meters on everybody's homes. And they do this time and again in environmental justice communities, which are low income, largely minority communities where people are working 3 jobs and don't have time to pay attention to what's going on around them. And then the industry will turn around and say, hey, look, it was successful in Worcester. Now let's roll it out all across the state. And then they'll go to New York, and then they'll go to Rhode Island and say, hey, look how great Massachusetts is. You guys are behind. Come on, get on the bandwagon. So the corruption is just so thick. TEDx, Jeremy Johnson is a Silicon Valley engineer. He and his wife lived in a condo. She's a medical doctor. Both of them got really sick, and nothing in her training had taught her what was going on. So Jeremy ultimately figured it out, and his wife, and remediated. And now Jeremy has dedicated his life's work to helping others. He did this really good TEDx talk, and he has a consulting firm. People can go to his website, and he will come online with you and guide you through what you might need to do. So lots of resources, you guys. Cell towers, oh, they started like this one over here, 300 feet up in the air in an industrial park. And then they started encroaching closer and closer and closer to where we live, where we work, where we go to school, where we play, where we worship. And they've gotten to the point that if they can paint it the same color of the building or stick it on a rooftop behind a facade, nobody's stopping them. So it's critically important to look at the non-industry funded science, because we know the industry does their own science and then spins it up as, hey, no problem here. So this Understanding EMFs is my personal research repository, because I got in way over my head when I started looking at the science and other important factors, and then I couldn't remember where to find them again. So being a tech writer, I just started organizing it, and I created a menu over here, and I've got a page for each one of these things. This is my cell tower page, but you need to look at the non-industry funded science that's telling us these things should not be close to where we are. And in fact, there's a death curve and a toxicity curve in the science that goes like this. Inside this, where people live, we see within 500 meters or 1,640 feet, much higher death rates and sickness rates. It starts coming down at about 500 meters, which is 1,640 feet. It doesn't actually catch up to the general population statistics until about double that. So like 3,000 feet. So how do we know where these things are? For the big antennas, the macro cell antennas, you could go out to antennasearch.com and punch in an address. I did the State House here in Boston and discovered that it usually gives us a 3-mile radius return on where all this infrastructure is. At the time that I ran this report, there were so many densified in Boston, like most of our major cities now, that it could only give me a 1-mile radius. So within 1 mile of our State House, there are 1,184 of these massive macro antennas, 70 towers, a lot of them slapped up on buildings. And this is what our world is starting to look like. This is one of the Boston neighborhoods in Hyde Park, which is another environmental justice community. And look at what we've done. So then what's 5G? 5G just means 5th generation. 4G was 4th generation. About every 10 years, we hit another generation of technology. And that sounds like, okay, it's just, the next one. Okay. But it's not. It's a whole new layer of microwave sickness. So the industry is selling it to us in our towns as faster entertainment downloads, smart cities, super highways. You can download a movie in lickety split seconds. But look at what they're doing. They're buying up the entertainment industry as they keep pushing all this streaming at you and I. So they're going to our towns and saying, hey, we'll give you some money if you start putting all these small cell antennas where you live, where you work, where you play. But 5G can't fly unto itself. There's something called the electromagnetic spectrum, which shows us the wavelengths of all these invisible signals, and it shows us how quickly they're coming together. All that's left to monetize are these little tiny millimeter waves. They've already used up the spectrum for these longer 3G and 4G waves that allow a signal to go from a cell tower into your building and up to your head with your cell phone and everything else that's connected to the cell towers. So now what they want to do is say, we can bring you faster, more. But unfortunately, it can't go very far and it can't get through buildings. So what that leaves us with is they want to still use the 3G and the 4G longer wavelengths to get into our buildings, but they also want to pair it with this new layer of 5G, these millimeter waves. And because these millimeter waves get disrupted by objects like trees and snowflakes or rain or buildings, their solution is to put a cell tower at the curb in our public access way every 2 to 12 houses in our neighborhoods right outside our bedroom. That's what 5G is. So we see that they are decimating our trees. They want to put them everywhere. And there was a congressional hearing in which Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut said in a commerce hearing up in DC to the industry, to these two gentlemen representing the industry, so please share with us, how much money has the industry invested in independent science before this was rolled out to make sure it's safe. And these guys just hemmed and hawed and then ultimately said, oh, we really don't know of any independent science that's been done. And Blumenthal says, so as far as health and safety is concerned, we're flying blind here. And that's the way the industry rolls. And that's the way our government, which is run by industry, rolls. So Computer World and others are already reporting that 5G is a bad joke. It's not even giving us these, faster whatevers. 4G rivals 5G in what's being actually delivered. So we've been sold a bill of goods. Verizon in January announced, woohoo, we're bringing 5G to 100 million people in all these major cities across the country. This is not a popular topic, and some people ding me for this, including my own state rep. But now that we know what we know biologically, this makes a ton of sense. Where they have put 5G in, when you look at the statistics on COVID, we see higher death rates and higher incident rates of people getting COVID-19. And here's what goes on. Our biological cells only have so much energy, and they're pretty well tuned to do normal cell repair and regeneration every day. What happens when we add this 24/7 toxicity of microwave radiation? Our poor cells in there are going, come on, guys, give me a break. I'm working as hard as I can here. And then what happens when we have a virus added on top of that? Our bodies can't keep up. So it's no wonder when you look at the statistics, there are statistically significant more cases of COVID. We're not saying that wireless causes COVID, but we are taking our bodies down when we don't remove these external exposures and give our bodies a chance to heal. So that is a really good paper, Dr. Beverly Rubik, Dr. Rob Brown. So with great gratitude to Dr. Magda Havas, she was one of the co-chairs of the EMF Medical Conference. She's a retired professor up in Canada who taught EMFs at Trent University for 25 years, I think. She knows our governments, by and large, are not monitoring this from all this cumulative radiation from every device, every cell tower, every small cell, every smart meter. So she is asking us to be citizen scientists and to purchase this meter, the Safe and Sound Pro 2. This is the one that was recommended at the medical conference. And by using the same meter and using her protocol, we can all do a scientific experiment the exact same way. She has us go down through our main streets in our towns, go to 5 consecutive street corners and take a reading, and then put that data into her database. And she welcomes everybody to go out to globalemf.net. And if you don't yet own the Safe and Sound Pro 2 meter, but you would like to, Rob Metzinger, who makes it at Safe Living Technologies, he's been very gracious up there in Canada with Dr. Havas, and he's offering a discount to anybody who wants to participate in her study and then have a really good meter on hand for everything else in your life. So I think it retails for $385, and I went ahead and took advantage of the discount. I think I paid $308 a couple of years ago. But I mentioned that in our homes, the science indicates we should be at 10 microwatts per square meter or less. Outdoors, from a conference that was held in Salzburg years ago, the scientists said, you know what, even if we could be at 1,000 outdoors, that might still put us in the green zone because we're on the move when we're outdoors. And presumably we have a safe environment to go home and detox in. So we want to be no greater than 1,000 when we're outside. So what do outdoor measurements look like today? We know the industry targets our cities first because they can make the most money when people buy a new phone and subscribe to their service. So we want to be at less than 1,000. One of our New Hampshire members went and measured at the local fire department in Westmoreland. That was at 417, not too shabby. Over in Keene, getting into the yellow area, 7,000. Nashua, 14,000. Concord, and we did this measurement during the pandemic where there weren't many cars driving by, there weren't people walking around, there weren't people in the buildings, you know, radiating with everything, but still, look, we were already in the red zone. Stratham, their downtown has a massive cell tower right there, 108,000. And then look at the North End in Boston. This is where we have these amazing Italian restaurants. It's a very highly trafficked tourist area. We have, it was a big immigrant community back after World War II. And there are a lot of people, a lot of little old people living up above all the storefronts and restaurants here. And look what they've done. These beautiful looking wrought iron lamps. These are small cell antennas right there where people walk and stand and wait to get into restaurants all day long, right under a cell tower. 613,000 microwatts per square meter. And, you know, here's what the industry does. They'll come in and they'll say, oh, we know this is a really popular area. Look, we can get you these really pretty cell towers. Well, when you walk down Hanover Street and you look to the left or the right at the streets off the main drag, they put up these really ugly gray monopoles with a cell tower on top of it, right outside these people's bedroom windows. So that's all the bad news, right? But we know how to make change. Martin Luther King Jr. guided us in this, and he said, when we have important changes in society, it comes through 3 channels. 1, you do what we're doing today. Let's just tell people. Let's give them the facts. Let them decide for themselves. And then most people will say, that's not right. And then we start fixing it and we start speaking up to empower the courts and to empower our public servants. So we're doing our part here, and there are excellent things to report. I'll go through some slides. I won't go into great detail, but just know when you're not quite so overwhelmed, you can come back and look at these other links and say, well, cool, maybe I can support some of these groups who are doing all this hard work. So legal solutions. The FCC got sued for ignoring 11,000 pages of scientific evidence that were entered into the public record. And a year ago, the courts, the Ninth Circuit in DC said, FCC, show us your homework when you said the FCC can still radiate the public at this level. And they just kind of went, well, the FDA said it was okay. Well, where's the FDA's homework? Not one of our government entities has done a top to bottom review of the scientific literature. Not one. So the courts reprimanded the FCC, Environmental Health Trust, Children's Health Defense, and others who sued were all put together in this lawsuit, and they won. And the courts remanded it, which basically means they sent it back to the FCC to said, you have to tell us what this is doing to children and the environment and infertility and, you know, other things. But again, it's the fox watching the hen house at the FCC. So our message today is there's no cavalry coming. We may get it fixed federally, but it's going to take years, if not more decades. And we've known about this in the science for 50 years. So don't wait, but do know that there are people working really hard to try and make these inroads at the federal level. And then even here at the state level, because of the education we've been doing, the Massachusetts Board of Legal or Board of Health, you know, the state level Massachusetts Board of Health, they have legal guidelines, and they've added 4 pages about cell towers and the risks and how our town should really start learning about this. And then we mentioned out in Pittsfield, where so many people got sick that they had to leave their homes. And by the way, all the pollinators have disappeared. Their Board of Health is the first in the country to listen to their citizens and do the investigation. And hats off to registered nurse Bobby Orsi. She was around when another General Electric company was putting toxins in their community. So she knows the corporate playbook, and she has led her Board of Health to issue an emergency order telling Verizon to come to the table and let's fix this. They gave them 7 days to come to the table. Instead, what did Verizon do? They went to the courts and said, we want an injunction against Pittsfield. So there's now a legal battle going on. The town, the mayor, the town attorney, even the Board of Health, they're all getting sued for not doing their job in protecting the public over, instead of corporate profits. So this cease and desist order is a really good one to share with your towns, because they could find themselves in the same situation when they could simply fix it, change their zoning bylaws, and not allow these things in at close range. So lots of other court cases are happening or have happened. And then for policy solutions, I mentioned we've been trying here for 10 years. There was a smart meter bill before I got involved. And then we have these commission bills to try and get the right minds at the state level. We're still embroiled in, I don't know, politics or something here. But Rep. Abrami introduced a bill. We supported him. We helped him get experts there. And in 7 months, New Hampshire passed it through the House, through the Senate, under Governor Sununu's pen. They enacted a bill into a law that said, we have to answer these questions. We're going to form a commission and find out why the insurance industry doesn't cover damages from this man-made radiation, why that fine print says to keep it away, why the FCC has dropped the ball on all of this, and why nobody's looking at the cumulative effect. So we got that law passed. Even during the pandemic, they did their investigation with leading, highly qualified scientists, doctors, engineers, state agencies, and the industry. We want everybody at the table to hear what people have to say. Then they came out with this groundbreaking report in November of 2020, and they document the captured agencies, and they make 15 recommendations to get our federal delegates on this, to get our state agencies on this, and to start labeling everything that's transmitting so we know as a public not to stand under these things, and to get our medical practitioners in the loop, and to start transitioning our homes, our schools, and communities to safe, hardwired technology. And this is a good presentation by Dr. Kent Chamberlain at the University of New Hampshire. He served on that commission. He was the chair of the Computer and Electrical Engineering Department. And he thought this would be a slam dunk. Of course, wireless is fine. He worked with EMFs for 30 years. And then he learned the facts. And now he's out there unpaid, trying to help educate the public. So he's got a great talk here, and you can look at his slides for how they came up with the first bill after the report came out. Now they have to start enacting new legislation to actually do something with that report. The first one that we did this year, Rep. Abrami introduced House Bill 1644. You can watch the hearings. Bipartisan support to get a setback so any new infrastructure can't show up right outside of people's homes. They also wanted a registry of harm because people are getting sick and they have nowhere they can log those complaints. So industry should be paying for a state level organization to have a registry of harm. And Frank Clegg, that retired president of Microsoft Canada, came and sent in testimony that indicates wireless technology is no longer advanced technology. It's outlived its useful life as a main source of connectivity. We're probably still going to have cell phones and stuff, but they should never have those infrastructures placed anywhere near the public. They should be put way back in the hills, which is not good for our environment, but it's a step for us as humans in the right direction. But we need to really do fiber optics to and through the premises to save us all. So just this month, on October 6th, the House Committee on Science, Technology, and Energy, after listening again to testimonies for a year, voted 15-3 that yes, there is something here that must be addressed. And so they gave the nod to go ahead and introduce new legislation in January that would inform the public of the pros and cons of wireless, that would give our municipalities guidance for staving off this infrastructure, because these are just good-hearted public servants in our towns, many of them volunteering their time. They might have a little expertise in one area or another, but they are no match for what the telecom industry does when they come in and say, hey, it's the law. You got to let us put up this infrastructure right here at the curb. And by the way, we're going to give you some money for leasing your public access way. Sounds like a good deal to our towns, and most of them just roll over because they have no idea what they're doing by allowing close range microwave radiation. So we want to give our towns something to go with when the industry shows that. And all over the country, the industry is telling towns that, oh, if anybody complains about this, you're the only town. Nobody else is talking about this. You know, it's just the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, folks, right? Well, that's simply not true. If you go to Americans for Responsible Technology, you will see that there are more than 150 groups all over the country already organizing on this. So sync up with one of these groups. If there's not one in your area, they also offer a toolkit for you to get started with and to form a group. So towns all over are actually fighting a lot of this and winning, but the winning ones often don't make it into the court cases because the industry knows if they take this town to court, they're going to lose because this town updated their zoning bylaws. So we don't see that in the court records, that so many towns have already successfully addressed this. But the industry will threaten to sue your town on a dime because that's what they do. It's a cost of doing business for them. But smart towns are updating their zoning code. So lots and lots of places are taking action. We've done things in Boston at the federal level. We got code put in Burlington, Massachusetts for the first time. They said, okay, you can't just drop and run. If we allow you to put this small cell equipment in, you have to come back every single year and recertify that it's still within the legal limits. And the Verizon lawyer was at that meeting when they ratified their policy. And they said, oh, well, you know, we don't want to set a precedent for an annual review because, mind you, they're going to have to put in millions of reviews because they want to put in millions of these small cells. And Burlington said, and we don't have that expertise to do the annual recertification. So you're going to have to pay us as a town to hire an independent consultant. So, you know, the money's starting to add up, and Verizon withdrew their 7 small cell applications because Burlington was smart enough to get their code strengthened, and it scared off the industry. And then they'll just go to the next town. So it's critical that we get our towns informed on this, and they have no idea by and large. Their town attorneys by and large are not experts in telecom law, but there are attorneys who are, and we can help you to get connected with those. So a lot of towns are doing this, but we don't hear about it in the media because the media is owned by the industry. So here's some good news, though. A grandmother in Easton, Connecticut figured this out, talked to her town, they looked at it, and then they have put a ban on 5G. They did it a couple of years ago, and they just re-upped their ban until it can be proven safe, which it never will be until they take it off of microwave radiation signals. Hawaii County, and there's a list here from Environmental Health Trust where you can see what people all over the world are doing. We just don't hear about it. Schools, oh my gosh, we have so many good resources to share. So New York Times did an expose, a 3-part story that Silicon Valley executives are banning screens from their children. They're sending their kids to schools with no technology, not wireless, not hardwired, no technology, because they know a child's brain develops best through meaningful interactions with their trusted educators, with their parents, where the other trusted adults in their lives, with their peers, and with the natural environment, not from the shallows of a screen. We can still use technology as a tool in our curriculum, but it should never, ever be a substitute for real teaching and learning. So God bless our friends at Grassroots Environmental Education, Patty and Doug Wood. They have that Americans for Responsible Technology project. They also launched a Tech Safe Schools national program. You can go here and they will send your schools a packet that shows them the science, shows them the legal risk exposure they have for radiating the kids and the staff, and then most importantly, the solutions to start migrating to safe technology. And the Massachusetts Breast Cancer Association has built curriculum with the Environmental Health Trust. So they have a faculty module, they have a student module, and then a tip sheet that can be printed out. They have training for elementary school, for middle school, and for high school. So we should be giving this to all of our schools. And just this week, I was so honored to be contacted by Dr. Alexia McKnight. She is a veterinarian radiologist down in Pennsylvania, and her kids' schools were looking for guest speakers for their professional development day, which is where teachers take a whole day off from teaching and they go in and they get training. So on Monday, Dr. McKnight and I presented 4 sessions on wireless risks, marinating in modern technology, I think is what Dr. Knight called it. But what an honor it was to teach 4 times in one day. And so we have a video of one of those sessions, and I'll be releasing this more broadly probably next week. But this is something that's new and great. This curriculum is great to share with our schools. So please take advantage of those resources. Our schools and families course will be online pretty soon, where you can train the entire school in one fell swoop. And Environmental Health Trust has all sorts of great resources to print out, and others are working on this at the state level. The U.S. Collaborative for High Performance Schools, thanks to Dr. Tony Stein, has already low EMF best practices that any of our schools could start integrating toward Green School Awardship. And for studying at home, the Mediterranean country of Cyprus has a great fact sheet out there. The translation from Greek has a couple rough spots in it, but yeah, once we know, hardwire everything you can. If something is radiating, keep as much distance, limit the amount of minutes that every age level is exposed to technology, because it shouldn't be the babysitter. It shouldn't be our playground. It should be very limited, and they give good recommendations there. Again, we have solutions for doctors, nurses, any healthcare practitioner. Dr. Cindy Russell, Dr. Joel Moskowitz have a website, Physicians for Safe Technology. We've got the medical conference, and then we have all these great resources for other professionals, engineers, physicists, technologists, architects, etc. So at home and work, if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, who knew there's a whole profession of building biologists who are certified and trained to come in and assess a space for things like mold, VOCs, air quality, water quality, and also electromagnetic radiation. So you can contact the Building Biology Institute for a directory of consultants. This award-winning film, Generation Zapped, has won Best Documentary with the Women's Independent Film Network, with the DC Independent Film Network, with the, and it was included as part of the United Nations Film Festival. And now it's widely available through our public library subscription streaming services, and it's now on Amazon Prime. So this is a really lovely way to sit down with your loved ones, to sit down with your neighbors, to sit down with the parents of the kids your kids hang out with, and just sit down and say, hey, let's just watch this together and see what we might learn. It's really well done. It's not fear-mongering, but you'll walk away in 74 minutes with a lot of really good facts. And then, who knew? PBS has already done 2 episodes, thanks to Camilla Reese and others. They have 2 half-hour episodes with Bert Wolf on his travel show. And then, as we said, Americans for Responsible Technology has a whole toolkit that you can just plug into. They've got everything you'll need to start the conversation in your town to get good zoning and to protect your neighborhood. So we are the examples for the children around us. They see what we're doing. Our actions just speak volumes. So we need to set limits for ourselves and our children. And most importantly, we need to model that good behavior. So I love this poster called 50 Ways to Take a Break, just to reconnect ourselves, right? And with our community and with our loved ones. You know, go take a nap, go hang out in the grass, go for a hike in the woods, go climb a tree, you know, go do some music, go to a concert, go play some music, call a friend, meditate, you know, all these things that we used to do that maybe we've kind of let go when we fell into the shallows of a screen. So model good behavior, and then This is another really cool area of scientific investigation called earthing or grounding. Basically, every living thing is meant to be connected to the natural electromagnetic fields from the earth, because they come up into our body and help to regulate our biological systems. But now we walk around on rubber-soled shoes. That doesn't allow the electrons to come up from the ground. Anything that's hot top or, the black top out there has a petrolatum product in it that seals it off, so we don't get the Earth's natural grounding benefits. So Clint Ober and Dr. Stephen Sinatra had published one of the first books on this, and I read it, and I thought, gosh, I looked at the science and I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense, but I live here in the Northeast. I can't be out walking barefoot 6 months out of the year. So I was so grateful when Dr. Laura Conover came up with her book called The Earth Prescription, and she takes it season by season and gives us these fun, cool things we can do to naturally ground outdoors without having to take our shoes off. Like, who knew? When you're out for a walk, just touch the high water content areas of plants and trees, the leaves, the pine needles, and you are instantly grounded to the earth's energy. Or if you have a pet that's on the grass, pet their less furry parts, and you are instantly grounded because they're grounded. So lots of really great tips in the Earth Prescription. And like I said, we know how to fix this. We have so many great resources for our towns to investigate. This is my page for municipal leaders, and there's a link to it here. And just encourage them to differentiate from what the industry's priorities are versus what's in the best interest of the public. And this book over here is free and online, Reinventing Wires. You can just print out the PDF. But it takes us through a dozen different reasons why wireless is a shallow solution for our towns. And we should be bringing fiber optics to and through the premises, not allowing any more wireless in at close range especially. So critically important to always measure, not against the FCC guidelines, because they don't protect us and they are in jeopardy right now, but against the biological effects, and we know what those are here. And then the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention already have something for ionizing radiation. That's the radiation that, breaks the atom, and the reason why we don't leave ourselves in the sun 24/7, or we don't go into an X-ray without some sort of protection. They have something called the ALARA principle. They're telling us we need to get to as low as reasonably achievable. And they have 3 prongs for that, which make perfect sense. Create as much distance as you can from a radiating device, right? Spend as little time as you can in front of a radiating device. And if you can't get away from it, you darn well better shield yourself, or you're going to get into some pretty big trouble. So they do that for the ionizing radiation. It's high time they put it up there too for the non-ionizing, non-thermal, low-level microwave radiation that is now everywhere in our environment. So we have great resources for our towns. So next steps, there is no safe level of man-made radiation in the scientific literature. So let's not kid ourselves. We really need to make safe spaces. Dr. Linda Birnbaum headed up the National Toxicology Program and the higher organization, the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. And in her interview, she tells us that there are still some really good people working at the federal level, but there are definitely captured agencies. And she suspects that we're going to need to bubble this up from the state and local to put that pressure on the federal. So by you talking to your towns and our towns working with our state agencies, we can really help to empower our federal agencies as well. So let's see about working on what's happening in New Hampshire, educate the public. I can be brought in to do educational forums in your town in person or by Zoom. And then let's get people informed. I actually wrote with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health an EMF fact sheet back in 2016 that I was told would be out in 3 months. It's never seen the light of day. And even worse, they put up something on the state's radiation control website that basically says, oh, nothing to worry about, no harm here. But if you're concerned, hey, look at these federal advisories. And we know the federal advisories are not protecting us, they're protecting corporate profits. So again, we can help at every turn. Our town should all be forming technology safety committees because technology is indeed here to stay. They should be offering smart meter opt-outs and transitioning our towns to hardwired, especially in our homes and our public spaces. And let's use the checklist that they have for us at Americans for Responsible Technology, take it to our towns, take it to our town attorneys, bring the sample bylaw that's out on their website, and show them some good code that's already been enacted in other towns. And Andrew Campanelli is one of the country's leading attorneys. Really, our town attorneys are not typically experts in this, and they have only been told by industry what to do, so they're inclined to go with the easy route and listen to industry. So Andrew Campanelli can come in and help to look at what your state allows in the law and what your current zoning is, and help you fill all the gaps to make your zoning as strong as it can be. So next steps, again, start where you are. What do you belong to? Community groups, professional organizations? We can bring this information as invited speakers. So just reach out and see what we can do. But for today, just start noticing, right? How can I reduce what's going on? Start taking an inventory. Where is it all? And then start with baby steps, because we know this is a lot. But do one thing today, right? Create a sleep sanctuary. Protect your sleep above all else. You can still use your cell phone as an alarm clock. You know, you can still enjoy anything you've downloaded onto a device, but put it in airplane mode and turn off the antennas. Then make your way to hardwiring with Ethernet cables and adapters, and choose airplane mode as your normal, and only turn these devices into active wireless mode for the shortest amount of time to do what you need to do. And again, check out the resources at Environmental Health Trust. They've got a ton of postcards and posters and flyers that you can just start putting up or giving to people. So thank you for letting us take your time today. We'll come out of screen share, but know that you can reach New Hampshire for Safe Technology out on Facebook. You can email them, same thing with me. You can go to our website, and you can also email us directly. So don't be shy. We're here to help you. And I thank you for letting us present for an hour and a half. But if there are questions that anybody would like to present, we can take those now. Lori or Jen may need to drop off, and that's okay. I can run the Q&A if, Jen, you need to go do what else is in your day today.
I have a few minutes. I can stick around.
Was there anything in the chat that we should address?
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. It looks like I'm not sure what the question was in reference to, but Iris, feel free to either take yourself off mute, or you can put in the chat what the question was in reference to. But she asked, does the EPA have any official research documenting this?
The EPA was actually doing some really good research on this early on. And then in 1996, when the industry got the Telecom Act updated to take away our rights, all that good work at the federal agencies was defunded, and all those guys are now gone or dead. So no, but we just met last week or this week with, actually it was last Friday, our congressman here in Massachusetts, Jim McGovern. And after we met with him and presented him with the facts, once he gets through the election next month, he has committed to reaching out to the EPA to see what they might do on this issue. So that's one way that you can use your influence, is to speak to your elected officials and say, please reach out, because if just one voice is doing this, everybody's so flat out busy that it's easy to ignore. But when multiple people start asking the same question, then we might be getting some traction. So Iris, thank you so much for asking, and please contact your federal delegates.
And Anna was asking if we have any information on safety levels for people with pacemakers.
I don't, but there are medical doctors. So there are interference things that can happen. But you should speak to your own doctor and ask your doctor to go to the EMF medical conference. There are physicians who you might be able to get a consultation with to find the answer to that question. But again, we're all very different biologically. And so you would need to speak to somebody on a one-to-one basis to find the true answer for your particular case. Okay.
And it looks like that's all we have in the chat. Someone had asked if we would be sending the slides. Yeah, so everyone who registered for this event, we will send the video and slides out shortly, either today, likely today. So you can feel free to share that with your friends and family as well. And we'll also be posting some November dates as well for anyone who may want to attend, and come see us again, because there's always new information to find out on the subject.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or want to take themselves off mute before we?
Yeah, Penelope, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, wonderful. This is so good, Cece. I've heard you before, and it's just, I'm just determined now to stop the music and really do something, first of all, in my own home. But what I would love is to have somebody come here. I think I will buy a meter. And you also mentioned being able to get a discount and participate in a study. I would be willing to do that.
If you go to globalemf.net, you'll find information there and the contact information to reach out and say you'd love to help with the study, and could you please have the discount code.
Great, great.
Penelope, can I ask where you live?
Yes, I'm in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
And right near Stratham. Right next to Stratham, which you mentioned.
Excellent. So we should definitely hook you up with Deb Hodgson. She and Representative Patrick Abrami, they're the two really power people behind the legislative work there, along with Senator Denise Ricciardi of Bedford. But yeah, you should definitely meet with Deb. So if you go out do you go on Facebook, Penelope?
Not much.
Okay.
I am on it, but I guess I can go to somebody's Facebook. Well, I have to be,
well, that's okay. We just want to introduce you to Deb because you're neighbors. So
okay.
I'll tell you what, with one of the emails that you've received about today's forum, just reach out, just hit reply, and it will go to Jen. And I think Jen would be happy to introduce you to Deb.
Okay. Is it Hodgson or son?
Hodgson, Hodgdon. Oh yeah, and Jen just dropped the email address right into the chat.
Okay, I'll see if I can get the chat. I'm not, but I can. Are there people around here? I think there was somebody listed on Rise Up New Hampshire who could come to your house and help you scope.
That may be Lori Schreier. I know she had said that in the past. She is dealing with some family things right now, so I don't know what her availability is.
Okay.
But talk to Deb. These guys are here to help. So just reach out and see where it takes you. You can also hire a professional to come in from the Building Biology Institute to really do the whole assessment of your home for all of the indoor environmental pollutants. There is somebody in New Hampshire who does that. So if that interests you, just let us know and we can put you in touch with her as well.
Okay, what was the name of that institute?
Building Biology Institute.
Okay.
Okay. So great questions, Penelope. Thank you so much. And I'm glad we've inspired you to take action.
They're fabulous, really. Just
Iris, I think you
amazing.
had your hand up next, and then we'll go to Kim and then back to Anna. Okay. Iris, did you have another question?
Hi, Cece. Yeah, I have many. You'll have to stop me because I know it's my third time being here and I still didn't move the needle because I just couldn't figure out what to do at my house. And I have two internet providers because when COVID started, my husband started working from home.
Right.
So it's a double whammy, and I know that. So my husband is actually hardwired with Comcast directly in his office.
Mm-hmm.
And when before that, my first provider is Frontier. Now we have an Ethernet for the television, so it's hardwired, I assume.
Mhm.
But I wanted to hardwire my office, which is on, I think, on the same side of the TV and the house. So now Frontier is offering fiber optic,
Mhm.
and I don't know what Comcast is, but is there a difference?
Well, Comcast started as a cable company, so I think they probably have high-speed cable lines,
Is
and fiber optics is a newer technology.
cable, is there a big difference? Is fiber optic much better? Because typically my Comcast is known to have better.
Yeah, you know what I do is I'd ask around. You probably have some sort of a community board in your town. Put that question out to them to see who likes what service.
Okay.
As far as speeds go, because it can
And
be different.
do you think in Connecticut,
Mhm.
do you think in Connecticut I could find an expert from the Building Biology Institute?
I do.
So just look it up in Google and they would do air quality and EMF.
Yeah.
Okay. One last quick question. I
Alright.
do have something that I thought was a landline, but it doesn't work without electricity.
Yeah. So here's what happened. The industry came in and sweet talked our towns into giving up the landlines because it costs the industry money to maintain those copper landlines. And so they convinced our towns that, hey, technology's moving forward. Let's bundle it all together, right? Phone, cable, internet. And now when the power goes down, if we don't have a really good backup generator and we have an emergency and our cell phone is dead, we're screwed.
So if Frontier said that they would, like, I'll pay an extra $10 for the landline because I have it. I mean, it is wired some way,
It is wired.
but it's a real old phone.
Yeah.
And it works, but it won't work without electricity. They said they'll give me a backup battery, but I said, well, the phone doesn't have any place to insert a backup. So it sounds like, or they don't know what they're talking about, or I don't know what a backup battery would be in this case.
Probably like a generator or something. You know?
Cece, can I chime in on the subject real
Yeah,
quick? Because
please
we do
do.
have another question regarding the fiber optics, and you can probably speak to this a little bit better than I, but aren't they using the fiber optics as a delivery method for 5G once the infrastructure is in place?
It
So
can
that's the
be.
only caution I would say is that fiber optics, if they're truly fiber optics, would be, you know, a safe solution. But if it's fiber optics in preparation for telecom, rolling out the 5G and using the fiber optics to run the 5G into the home, that might be a place of caution.
Mhm.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, Jim. That's a big one. So you see, that's where I get overwhelmed and stopped because it's so for me, it's so complicated. I'll look
It
for a
is. Just keep doing
consultant.
baby steps, Iris. Take one step at a time, fix one thing, catch your breath, and then come back and do the next.
Okay, and can you send out again the lecture with the links that I know
Oh,
you?
yeah, it's all coming your way.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Kim, thank you for your patience.
Cece, I just want to let you know that I have one of your
Oh.
meters. I
Mhm.
bought it after I saw you last summer. You came to Minneapolis. Mary Bacon invited you.
Yes.
The Kingfield neighborhood. And they have successfully all summer held off the cell tower that is on their corner. And I have successfully 2 times this summer held off the installation of a foundation for a cell tower on my corner.
Excellent.
So I am so grateful to you and all your information that you shared when you came to Minneapolis. And I can only hope that once I've used the Freedom of Information Act,
Mhm.
I'm still waiting for my information to come to send to Andrew Campanelli. But I
Okay,
am
good.
hopefully going to never get a pole on my corner. So
Oh,
thank
bravo.
you so much for all your help. I just
Oh.
appreciate it. No
Well, we
question.
are so inspired by you guys in Minneapolis. For those who don't know, What she just explained is that she's not letting them on her
My
public
corner.
access way at all. What happened to a neighbor there, though, is that they came and put in the footing for a small cell tower. And then the truck shows up with a big long pole on it. And the neighbors all came out of their homes and said, well, what are we doing here? And they said, we're installing a small cell. And the neighbors all came out and said, well, we don't really want this right outside of our bedroom windows, right? And one of the neighbors right there has multiple sclerosis, and she definitely didn't want it right outside her bedroom window. And so the installer called the police. The police came and said, well, actually, these folks have a right to peaceful assembly. And so the installer left. And they came back several times, and higher levels of police authority came in, and each time the police reaffirmed the public's right to peaceful assembly. And I understand that one of the installers kind of slipped off to the side and said to one of the gals, keep doing what you're doing, because they cannot install a pole if there's fall danger to people or cars right there. So that is peaceful protest at its best. So I am so grateful to know that now you're able to do that on your property there too, Kim.
Well, and it's taken all summer, Monday through Friday, 7 to 3. My husband or I, we're watching our corner. And if we know the trucks that come by, and we have neighbors that will come stand with us, and we have twice successfully headed them off. So
Excellent.
I don't know, in Minnesota, it's getting cold. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to get through the winter without having to watch our corner so closely. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, we are inspired. Thank you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right, Anna.
Yes, thank you. It's actually just Anne, but that's
Ann.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I just got sort of thrown into this a few weeks ago. I'm in Keene, New Hampshire,
Okay.
because we got notification that they're putting in a small cell tower. Oh, it's probably about 100 feet from where we are, but it's a residential district, and they're obviously, I think they already have 2 installed in Keene. They have 5 more approved, and this is the next one in line to be installed. So been doing, pretty busy with a bunch of other things, but trying to, to do what we can. The neighbor that this is being put up on the public right away, right on the corner of her house. Her mother is the one with a pacemaker, so she's concerned about that. But also there are families with children here. It's, it's just really not good.
And so a couple thoughts for there. Lori Schreier, who's part of New Hampshire for Safe Technology,
I've been in touch. Yeah, I've been in touch with her.
We were educating the Keene City Council a couple of years ago, and they were listening, and they took a vote that they were not going to allow in anything beyond regular 4G. So none of the souped up 4G that would accompany 5G.
Right.
They were going to hold off on that until the New Hampshire Commission could come out with their final report. So that was a really good, logical, common sense thing for a community to do. They voted that in. And then my understanding is that Beth Ann Cooley from the CTIA, which is the wireless industry, got into the mayor's ear. And I don't know what was said, but the mayor then went back to his city council and made them do a revote. And somehow they voted 8-7 to overturn that ban. So there's dirty politics going on.
Yeah.
Or scared public servants, because the industry is really good at bullying public servants. So I don't know which it is, but the bottom line is that we need protective zoning so that this cannot happen. So keep educating everybody around you. I can help with an education forum specifically for your town. Lori had brought me up years ago. We did a Generation Zapped screening at your public library, and then she had me on for a cable interview that helped to inform the community some.
Yeah. Do you know if that was Mayor Hansel I think he was voted in 2020. So I'm not sure he was mayor at that time. He's our current mayor. So
I think so. Lori can confirm, but that sounds about right. But
Okay.
some of your city councilors really were concerned about this issue. And then I know that one of the couples who retired to Keene and moved in where one of those small cells is, they came and testified with us at the State House too. So I don't know if you've connected with them.
No, I don't think so.
But check in with Lori because she
Yeah.
will remember what their names are. And if she's offline, check in with me because I can go do
Well,
that.
right now there was Randy Filio and Terry Clark, who were, Terry Clark's the county commissioner. Randy Filio has been in the city councilor, I think, wrote having some concern about this. So there is actually a meeting November 9th. There was one hearing, they voted to continue, but it's, I think what's coming out of that is an ordinance to notify people up to 1640 feet away rather than just 300 feet that this is coming in.
That's progress.
So it's a tiny, tiny bit. It's not to have a setback. It's just to notify that many people that this tower is going to come into your area. So we've, tried to work with the head of public works who's responsible for giving the building permit. He's saying legally has no recourse and the city could be sued if he doesn't grant the permit, which the shot clock, I think he has till the end of October for this
Yeah.
particular tower. So
So
it's
are you
just,
guys, have you
yeah.
guys engaged an attorney?
no, we
You
haven't.
should. You
Yeah.
should. You should as fast as you can.
Do you have
Because-
any recommendations for an
Yeah,
attorney here?
people usually start with Andrew Campanelli.
He's now, he's national, you
He's out of New
mentioned.
York, but he does work all over the country.
Okay. Do you have a way to get in touch with him?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's in my slides, which you'll get today
okay,
and tomorrow.
wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
And he'll be able to tell you straight out whether, yeah, you are screwed and you should probably just move. Because if they've already gotten the applications approved and they're coming in, but
Yeah.
like Kim's been doing, get out there and stand out there and don't let them put those poles up.
right,
And,
right,
and we're trying as best we can to get legislation, but there's not an appetite to outright say, no, you can't put these in because it's the live free or die state and every town wants to govern themselves. So I think the best we'll be able to do is put forward recommendations for how to protect your community instead of
Right.
telling the industry, you can't do this.
right. And our city right now is saying we have no recourse because of the,
Well, I would get a
the-
legal
yeah.
opinion on that.
Okay.
Because again, our towns are usually good doobies who are out of their depth.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. You know what you might do too is definitely take measurements before and after if that thing does go up. Measure right now
Yep.
where you're not being radiated and then have something to speak to later.
Okay, great.
I also wanted to chime in real quick. And I'm actually based in the Monadnock region, so I'm not terribly far from you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If I can help provide, any additional resources or information, I'm always happy to help. So, but I saw last week, I dropped my son off, does improv class at the MoCo
Yep.
Art Center there every
Yep.
Friday, and dropped him off, and lo and behold, went across town to Sierra Trading, and right on campus property is that giant tower. And I don't know, how long that's been there. I haven't noticed it there, but I do notice that Keene is doing a pretty rapid rollout. So
Yes, yeah.
definitely something to keep an eye out for. So
Yeah.
good luck with
Okay,
your
great.
efforts.
And the
Yeah.
industry knows the wheels are coming off the bus, so they're pushing in as fast and furious as they can before they're made to stop.
Right,
Because once
right.
it's up, it's really hard to get taken down,
Yeah.
if ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, I
Got your
will
work
be
cut
in
out for
touch.
you.
Okay.
Yes.
Good luck.
Need a little bit more time. That's the only issue.
I know,
Yeah.
but get a legal consult as fast as you
Okay.
can so that you don't waste your time doing something that legally you may have no
Yes, ma'am.
recourse on.
Okay. Okay, great.
Good luck. All right.
Thank you.
Have we answered all questions?
Let me just take another look at the chat here. Let's see, we have Iris was asking to invite you to a panel to one of the future environmental meetings.
Sure.
She said she would bring it up on your meeting on Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be honored to, Iris.
My meeting. Okay. I can ask, I have a comment.
Sure.
So I asked the question about the EPA because I recently learned if EPA does, EPA under the government, if they do research and whatever they have that in their finding is, could be used for legal argument. So I don't know if the FCC or whoever does research that is governmental, if there's any governmental
There
research that
hasn't
could
been
be
any research
as
on this.
used for legal argument. So that
Yeah, thank you for that. If you go to the Environmental Health Trust, they have all the documents from all the agencies that used to
I
be
have that.
working on
Okay.
this.
Okay.
And they do bring those up.
That's why I asked.
Cases. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I ask about EPA, because I know that they're just now testing for very basic air pollution, that everybody knows that air pollution is bad for you. And they're just doing very basic science experiments in EPA with mice showing air pollution, that all the science, there's consensus.
Yeah.
with Science.
It's just buying industry.
So
more
that's why I
time,
asked
right?
that question. Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for giving us 2 hours out of your life today. Again, as Jen said, we're here to help. We're here twice a month. Bring anybody you think should be learning alongside you, because it can be a very lonely conversation when it's just you. So there's strength in numbers. Watch Generation Zap together, share our videos. And we have our videos go up on my YouTube channel, which is under Cecilia Doucette on YouTube. You can get to a lot of the videos there. You can get to them on Facebook if you go to Facebook. So just share and share alike. All right, everybody. Thank you, Jen. Everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Cece. Thank you for everyone for
Happy
attending.
Halloween.
Bye.
Bye.